Listen to me carefully. That person who disappeared from your life without explanation, the one who left you questioning everything about yourself, they didn't ghost you because you weren't enough. They ghosted you because they are empty inside, and your light reminded them of everything they refused to face about themselves. You've been carrying their abandonment like it's proof of your unworthiness. But what if I told you that ghosting is never about the person being left behind? What if I told you it's about emotional cowardice dressed up as indifference? If this feels like I'm reading your mind, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what hurts most about being ghosted. I read every single comment, and your story might be exactly what someone else needs to heal today. Here's what actually happened. You showed up authentically. You were real, vulnerable, present. And that terrified them. Not because you did anything wrong, but because authentic connection requires emotional courage they simply don't possess. When someone ghosts you, they're not rejecting you. They're running from the mirror you held up to their own emotional emptiness. John Bowlby's attachment theory teaches us that people who struggle with intimate connection often learned early that disappearing is safer than dealing with emotional complexity. They didn't learn this because they're bad people. They learned it because someone taught them that vulnerability equals danger. But here's where you've been getting it wrong. You've been interpreting their inability to stay as evidence of your inability to be loved. That's not just incorrect. It's emotionally devastating and completely backwards. Think about it logically. Someone who truly values connection doesn't vanish when things get real. Someone who respects others doesn't leave them hanging in emotional limbo. Someone who has done their inner work doesn't use silence as a weapon. Their ghosting revealed their character, not yours. Carl Rogers talked about unconditional positive regard. The idea that healthy relationships require accepting someone fully. When someone ghosts you, they're showing you they're incapable of that acceptance. Not because you're unacceptable, but because they haven't learned how to accept themselves. You know what's really happening when you get ghosted? You're getting saved from investing more time, energy, and emotion into someone who lacks the emotional maturity to handle what you're offering. Their silence is actually protecting you from a longer, messier disappointment down the road. But I know it doesn't feel like protection. It feels like rejection. It feels like you weren't worth an explanation, weren't worth basic human decency. And that pain is real and valid. Feel it. Don't pretend it doesn't hurt, but don't let it become your truth about your worthiness. Nathaniel Branden wrote about self-esteem being built through self-acceptance, not external validation. Every time you interpret someone else's emotional immaturity as evidence of your inadequacy, you're handing your self-worth to people who haven't even figured out their own worth yet. Here's what I need you to understand. Healthy people don't ghost. Emotionally mature people have difficult conversations. People who value connection fight for it, communicate about it, or end it with honesty and respect. When someone ghosts you, they're telling you everything about their capacity for relationship and nothing about your deservingness of love. The person who ghosts you is the same person who will ghost the next person and the person after that. It's not about any of you individually. It's about their pattern of avoidance, their fear of emotional intimacy, their inability to handle the vulnerability that real connection requires. Alfred Adler believed that all behavior has a purpose, and ghosting serves a very specific purpose. It protects the ghoster from having to face themselves in the mirror of genuine relationship. They disappear not because you're too much, but because you're enough, and they know they can't match that energy. Stop rewinding every conversation, analyzing every text, wondering what you could have done differently. Stop trying to solve the mystery of their silence. The mystery isn't mysterious. They left because they're emotionally unavailable, not because you're emotionally unworthy. Your job now isn't to understand them better. Your job is to understand yourself better. To recognize that someone's inability to appreciate your presence is information about them, not instructions for how you should change. You are not too much for the right person. You are not too sensitive, too available, too interested, too anything. You are exactly enough for someone who has done the work to show up emotionally. The person who ghosted you simply isn't that person. Here's your new truth. Every ghost that leaves your life is making room for someone who will stay. Every person who can't handle your authenticity is clearing space for someone who will celebrate it. Every coward who chooses silence over honesty is removing themselves from your path to real love. Stop chasing ghosts. Start choosing yourself. Stop trying to resurrect what they killed with their silence. Start creating something new with people who know how to use their voice. You deserved an explanation. You deserved basic respect. You deserved honesty. The fact that you didn't get it says nothing about your worth and everything about their character. Now stop giving your power to people who were too weak to even say goodbye. You want to know what's really tragic? You've been questioning your worth because someone who can't even face their own emotions decided you weren't worth facing either. You've been carrying their cowardice like it's your cross to bear, but their inability to be present has nothing to do with your ability to be loved. I see you there scrolling through old messages, wondering if you misread the signs. I see you analyzing every moment, trying to decode what went wrong, but here's what you're missing. Nothing went wrong with you. Something was already broken in them, and they chose to break you rather than fix themselves. Let me tell you something about people who ghost. They're not living authentic lives. They're performing. They're managing impressions. They're so disconnected from their own emotions that when real emotion shows up in you, they panic and run. Your authenticity didn't scare them away because it was too much. It scared them because it was real, and they've forgotten how to be real. You know what happens to people who build their lives on emotional avoidance? They end up empty. They end up alone. Not because they're bad people, but because they never learned that connection requires courage, that love requires showing up, that relationships require the very vulnerability they spend their lives running from. But you showed up. You were brave enough to be real with someone who was fake enough to disappear. You offered authenticity to someone who trades in illusions. You brought depth to someone who lives on the surface. The problem was never that you were too much. The problem was that they were too little. And I need you to stop making their emotional poverty about your emotional wealth. Stop shrinking yourself because someone else couldn't expand. Stop questioning your worth because someone else couldn't see it. Stop dimming your light because someone else chose to live in darkness. Here's what's going to happen next. You're going to heal from this. You're going to realize that being ghosted by someone who was never really present anyway isn't actually a loss. You're going to understand that someone who leaves without explanation was never planning to stay anyway. And you're going to attract someone who doesn't just stay. They celebrate the fact that you're brave enough to show up fully. The right person for you doesn't need you to be less sensitive, less available, less interested, less anything. The right person for you needs you to be exactly who you are, because they've done enough inner work to recognize authenticity when they see it and courage when they experience it. So stop trying to solve the mystery of why they left. Start celebrating the miracle that you're brave enough to love despite the risk. Stop making their departure about your worth. Start making their departure about their loss. Because the person who ghosted you didn't just lose you. They lost the opportunity to grow, to heal, to experience real connection. And you get to keep growing, keep healing, keep connecting. You get to keep being real in a world full of people performing. You get to keep being brave in a world full of people hiding. You get to keep choosing love despite the risk because you understand something they don't. Real love is always worth the risk of real loss. That's who you are. That's what you bring to the world. And anyone who can't handle that isn't rejecting you. They're disqualifying themselves from your life. Now lift your head up. You're not the ghost in this story. You're the one who stayed real.